Well, U.S. lawmakers are meeting today to certify Donald Trump's win in the 2024 election, exactly 4 years since his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in Washington, seeking to overturn his 2020 election loss. Since then, the 78-year-old has navigated a historic return to power and is set to take office in 2 weeks. The congressional joint session is the final step in reaffirming the presidential election after the Electoral College officially elects the winner in December. Mr. Trump has downplayed the January 6th riots and suggested that many have been unfairly prosecuted for their participation in it. As president, he will have the authority to fully pardon those involved or even shorten their sentences. Outgoing President Joe Biden issued a reminder that the riots should not be forgotten or rewritten. He's set to attend Mr. Trump's inauguration in a bid to restore the country's tradition of a peaceful transition of power.
Now it's your duty to tell the truth, to remember what happened, and not let January 6th be rewritten or even erased. To honor the Constitution, not only the most extraordinary of days, but it's one of the toughest days in American history, January 6th. But every day, you've sworn an oath, and I know you'll never forget the oath you swore to, but now, 4 years later, I'm leaving the office of president. I'm determined to everything in my power to respect the peaceful transfer of power.
Well, straight to Nick Harper, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Nick, take a look at the Congress back in 2020. Take a look at it today. What can we expect and what's changed?
Well, Jill, it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. As you can see behind me, Washington, D.C. woke up to a sizable snowstorm this morning. We're expecting it to continue snowing during the course of the day. It means that the federal government and many of the government agencies are closed for business, but Congress is going ahead with this vote. It takes place at 1 p.m. local time, about 5.5 hours from now. However, ahead of this snowstorm, which came in overnight, Republican lawmakers were telling their lawmakers not to head home for the weekend, just in case they couldn't get back to D.C. However, many Democrats, we're told, did leave the city. However, the expectation is, snow aside, that things should go smoothly in comparison to the violence that we saw 4 years ago. That's largely because we've seen security ramped up around the Capitol complex. High security fences have been erected. On top of that, the snow will certainly make it difficult for people to travel to the Capitol. And we've also seen laws tightened over the last few years, meaning that there is now a law in place, meaning that no one, including the vice president, can overturn the result of a presidential election, something, of course, that Donald Trump was trying to get his then vice president, Mike Pence, to try and do. But I think most importantly, this time round, no one is questioning the 2024 election result, unlike 4 years ago, where Donald Trump was stirring up his supporters, saying that the election had been stolen. So it is expected to go smoothly. It should take about an hour. And interesting to note, the person who lost to Donald Trump, Vice President Kamala Harris, will be overseeing the proceedings.
Change of tack, Nick. We know that current President Joe Biden has signed executive orders banning offshore drilling across large areas. Tell us more. How expansive is this? How binding is it?
Well, both are quite binding and quite extensive. This was expected by Joe Biden, part of his climate change policy, doing it in the dying days of his presidency. It means that there can now be no new offshore drilling for either oil or gas, and it covers really the majority of the US coastline, about 625 million acres. It covers most of the east coast of the United States, including parts of the Gulf of Mexico, also the whole of the Pacific coast, and also part of the Bering Sea off Alaska. Now, bear in mind that President-elect Donald Trump has promised to ramp up domestic production of oil and gas. This could make it difficult. He has said he wants to overturn any of President Biden's policies. But President Biden's executive order comes as part of a rather obscure Lands Act dating back to 1953. And part of that means that no incoming or future president can overturn what has been decreed by this president. So it'll make it very difficult for President-elect Trump to overturn this. And also, there is no end date to this new law by President Biden. However, we have already heard from Donald Trump's team. They've called this a disgraceful decision, political revenge on the American people. And he's promised to up production and do, as he says, drill, baby, drill.
As always, thank you, Nick Harper, reporting live from Washington, D.C. there.